The Coeur d'Alene School District is warning parents that online classes could return, but it's not just because of COVID cases that are increasing.
Our Kyle Simchuk is in Coeur d'Alene to explain why this switch could happen in some schools. Kyle.
Well, yeah, the Coeur d'Alene School District says COVID-19 and other illnesses are really putting a strain on staffing. This week, 1 out of every 6 teachers called out requesting a sub, and the problem is there's just not enough substitutes to cover them all. So the Coeur d'Alene School District says throughout the school year they have endeavored to keep students in the classroom, but that's becoming more difficult with staffing shortages. Yesterday, 104 teachers called out. Superintendent Sean Hawker sent out an email to parents asking them to be prepared for the possibility that some schools may have to close for a few days, weeks, or longer.
Not surprised. I know it's made it sound like it's not going to be for very long, if it's going to happen, just till things die down. Yeah. And I'm impressed that they haven't, throughout this year, closed down already. They've tried their best throughout the whole semester as it is. So.
What was that like for your student, just with the remote learning in the past?
Terrible. It's a boy. He does not do good. Just staring into a computer, trying to focus.
If a school had to shut down, the district says they will give parents as much advance notice as possible. A district spokesperson told us they can only anticipate those staff shortages a few days in advance. Reporting live in Coeur d'Alene, Kyle Simchuk, KREM 2 News.
All right, Kyle, thank you very much. In the meantime, Washington state businesses need your help more now than ever. Restaurants and hotels have built up significant debt throughout the pandemic, and they're running out of time to repay it. Today, the Washington Hospitality Association reviewed the overall impacts of the pandemic. President and CEO Anthony Antone says Washingtonians stepped up and supported local restaurants in a huge way. He says because of that support, nearly 1,400 fewer restaurants closed in the second 6 months of the COVID-19 pandemic compared to the first 6 months. Aside from the immediate need of getting out of debt, Antone says workforce scarcity is going to be the biggest challenge for the industry in 2022.
A lot of them are going to look at what shifts are profitable. And the old adage of I have to stay open 7 days a week constantly is probably going to shift back to if I'm slow and this is not a profitable week, do I need to be open? I think that'll be consideration some will make.
Well, looking ahead, he says the association is looking for and will be open to any solutions to help businesses prepare for any future COVID surges.
Let's take a look at the current COVID-19 numbers right here in Spokane County as more residents are getting infected with COVID and this Omicron surge. After a record number of cases earlier this week, we are seeing 923 new cases reported today. 129 people are hospitalized right now. That's according to the Spokane Regional Health District. There were also 3 new deaths in the county as well. More states are calling in the military now to join the fight against the coronavirus.
Yeah, the nation is still recording nearly 800,000 new infections a day, even as the spread appears to have slowed in the Northeast. Michael George has the latest on pandemic developments across the country.
Washington became the latest state to summon its National Guard to help hospitals overwhelmed by COVID-19.
Emergency rooms are full. More people are showing up all the time. We want to help hospitals handle the volume of patients.
Members of the armed forces are being called up across the country as the Omicron-fueled outbreak continues to spread.
The most critical need right now is medical staffing for our hospitals.
Today, the White House said FEMA would cover the costs of the deployments.
I am now directing an expansion of our FEMA policy to permit funding to states who elect to use their National Guard troops to fill these critical support roles in hospitals.
Healthcare workers aren't alone on the pandemic's front lines. Here in New York City, schools are drawing up plans for a possible return to remote learning. Many students have already stopped going to classes. Citywide attendance numbers show nearly 1 in 4 stayed home on Thursday. At one school, less than half of them showed up.
I just want my child to have a normal childhood back.
In Philadelphia, over 100 schools have switched to online teaching because so many teachers and staff are either sick or in quarantine because of COVID-19. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
All right, let's switch gears here quickly. Pretty slick morning out there for a lot of folk. We had that fog overnight and then, it turned into freezing fog because it was below freezing last night.
And what's going to happen again tonight, we've got a dense fog advisory in effect now across most of the inland Northwest, where you see shaded in gray right there. That's through tomorrow afternoon. And when you head down and you kind of see that turquoise color, that's down in the lower Columbia Basin. That's a freezing fog advisory there. So that means it's not only going to freeze onto the roadways, it'll freeze onto your windshields. So you have to be very, very careful. But black ice will be very prevalent late tonight and in the overnight hours. Areas of fog right now in Spokane, 33 degrees. That's the current temperature with wind out of the northeast at 6 miles per hour. The storm track, though, still moving to the north of us up into the Gulf of Alaska. Here's a look at the long holiday weekend forecast. Of course, Monday, Martin Luther King Day. We'll look for a high of 38 on Saturday, 36 on Sunday, and 37 on Monday. I'll check the rest of that 7-day forecast for you coming up in just a couple of minutes.
It was a murder case that caught the attention of the nation thanks to a viral post on TikTok. 19-year-old Jason Fox was killed and buried in a shallow grave near Newport, Washington. A video calling for justice for Jason went viral with millions of views. Now justice has been served. After less than 3 hours of deliberating, a jury found Claude Merritt guilty of killing Fox. The jury found him guilty of first and second degree murder, first degree manslaughter, first degree kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and failing to notify a coroner. Claude will return to court for sentencing, which is on February 18th.
Well, almost 40 years after a 9-year-old Nampa, Idaho girl was found dead, the man that detectives say is responsible has now been charged in her murder. We want to warn you, some of these details are disturbing. David Derimple is facing first-degree murder charges in the death of Darilyn Johnson. Now, she disappeared back in 1982 when she was walking to school. A massive search was launched to find the 9-year-old, but ended 3 days later when a fisherman found her body next to the Snake River. Autopsy reveals that she had been sexually assaulted and suffered blunt force injuries to her body and head. DNA evidence linked Derimple to the murder in 2020, and a preliminary hearing is set for January 25th.
Court records now confirm that an 18-year-old accused of threatening to kill a university high school classmate has pleaded guilty to misdemeanor harassment charges. Adam McCarty was arrested after allegedly posting a social media threat against a student. McCarty was reportedly involved with an altercation with another student before the incident and made similar threats to that student that were posted on or passed around on social media. McCarty was sentenced to 364 days in jail, although 303 of those days were suspended. So in all, the teenager served 61 days. All right, coming up tonight, the Gonzaga Bulldogs crushed BYU
Boy,
last
did they
night.
ever.
Not even close. After the break, our Travis Green will join us to break down some of the highlights from that game.
And a little bit later in the newscast, 2021 was a top 10 year for warmest years ever. We're going to take a look at that data when we come back.